Welcome to Ace Martial Arts Interviews. I'm Daewoud. This interview is with Natalie Gonzalez Hills. Natalie has travelled the world and has dedicated her life to becoming a professional Muay Thai fighter and mixed martial artist. In this interview, Natalie shares with me some great stories and inspiration. It's an incredible journey. Please enjoy my interview with Natalie Gonzalez Hills. Born in the Philippines, raised in England, and now living, working and fighting at the Gold Coast, Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, Natalie Hills. Natalie, welcome to Ace Martial Arts Interviews.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's a nice introduction. You never know where you're going to end up.
Yeah. So where's next? What's after the Gold
Um,
Coast?
I don't know. You know what? This is the most sort of the most stable I've been for a couple of years with fighting. You know, you never know where you're going to end up. But yeah, the Gold Coast is where I've been building, I guess. So I've been a bit of a nomad ninja. I've been traveling a lot, and yeah, I've found my home, and I've been there for a couple of years now.
And you did live in Sydney.
Yeah, so I was only meant to be in Sydney for 3 months, and then it turned into about five years on and off. And I only left recently because I found a new gym, and I was driving 10 hours from Sydney to the Gold Coast to train with John Wayne and Angie Parr.
Hold on a
And
second. Did you say drive 10 hours to go
yes,
train at a gym?
yes.
Now that's commitment.
So
That's like next level shit. That's next level.
yes. So what happened was, in summary, I got back from America after doing MMA, and
Yeah.
I had decided to pursue Muay Thai. So I was living and working in Sydney, and every time I got a Muay Thai fight, I would then take all my stuff in my car and drive 10 hours up to the Gold Coast and do a fight camp with the Pards. And then I would drive 10 hours back to Sydney after the fight. And I did that for a year before I officially moved to the Gold Coast. So I've been here. Well, it was a year in February. So yeah, it's
Wow.
been
And
my anniversary, Gold Coast anniversary.
for anyone watching or listening, if you don't know who John Wayne Parr is, I think you should turn this video off now. Would you agree, Nat?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even before I started my journey, I'm from like the smallest town in England, and I remember hearing about him then, and that was before I'd even left to do my whole martial art journey. So the fact that he's my mentor now is just ridiculous,
That's
really.
amazing.
Um,
That's
yeah.
amazing. But when did this martial arts journey of yours start?
Um, I guess as a kid, well, not I guess, it definitely was from my father. So he was studying karate in Hong Kong when he was, I guess, in his 20s. And then when he went back to England, he was studying karate. But then when he had me, he stopped. But as soon as I got to about 8 years old, he put me in a class, and I got really obsessed and trained really hard until I was about 14.
Yeah.
And then you know, did comps and things, and I missed some gradings, but I got to about a brown belt, and then I had a break from martial arts, and then got back into it when I was in my last year of uni, so 21. So quite a big gap.
And what made you get back into it again? What was the catalyst for you to kick it off again?
So I've spoken about it before in interviews, and I made a point of not going over it too much, because whenever I would do an interview, people would always ask that question, and I felt like I was always saying the same thing. But it is true, and it's part of my story. I had a really bad year where sort of three things happened in a row, and one of those things was that I got attacked at work. So I used to do charity fundraising, and we would go to different areas and raise money for different causes. And when we went to one area, my whole team and me were basically attacked by a gang. So and it was racial. So I was from a small town in England, and yeah, they basically called me chinky and beat me up. And then I also had a dysfunctional relationship at the time, and I did get attacked by my boyfriend, as well as some other stuff that was going on. So all combined, I just didn't really feel very physically strong or confident at all, and that's what prompted me to start boxing. And because of my karate background as a kid, I actually picked it up quite fast. So I had a girlfriend that started with me, and she liked the workout, but it wasn't really her thing. And then I just ran with it. Yeah, and I started training so much that the coaches were like, "You should have a fight." And I never even thought about fighting before. It was literally just to improve my confidence and get me out of the house. Uh, and then I loved it so much, I ended up going abroad to pursue it. So yeah, it just kind of took over.
It's a massive event in your life that got you back into martial arts. How long did
Yeah.
it take for you to start feeling empowered and strong again mentally?
To be honest, it was almost instant. So with the attack that happened, it was all these things kind of happened in the space of my university years. So the first year, I got attacked at the charity, and then the second year, I'd kind of lost my way a bit, and by the third year, I wasn't very in control of my life, had like a bad group of friends, and wasn't living very responsibly. And that's when the incident happened with my boyfriend at the time. And it was like a slow escalation, like things got worse. But I remember when I went to the gym for the first time, did that first boxing class, like I instantly felt better. Because I mean, the endorphins, like I hadn't trained in ages and I'd always been fit as a child.
Yeah.
And, just straight away, you felt like you've done something, you've achieved something. And then the more classes I did and the more your technique improves, the more you have like an actual skill set that you're building, that just made me feel like I was achieving something. And so that was more of a sort of a growing confidence that, kept me coming back. So I would say it was instant. I definitely felt that I was getting stronger and learning and more empowered, and definitely did help me defend myself when I needed to as well.
So you've traveled the world learning
Yeah,
martial arts. Like that's a dream.
yeah,
Did you?
it really is, and it's I still feel really young, but I actually turned 32 this year, and it just surprises me that I've actually been this like away from home for so long. So when I originally left the UK, I was like, I do not want to be here for my 23rd birthday, and I went away. I actually had my first fight camp and fight in Thailand, and I didn't even celebrate my birthday, and it became a bit of a ritual that I just don't do anything. I try not to do anything for my birthday. People find out it's my birthday and they'll want to do things, but for me, I just didn't want to focus on myself or the age. I just wanted it to be all about my journey. And I was convinced that I'd become a champion and I wouldn't go home until I became a champion. So I really had that sort of set in my mind. Yeah.
Tell me about that first fight. To that first fight in Thailand. Is it true your first fight in Thailand was in a strip club?
Yes. And obviously, that out of context, that sounds crazy,
I
but
know.
it was one of the hilarious situations. So I had trained in this small town in England, and I thought I was fit. I've been training multiple classes every night. I took myself for like a cute run. And then I went to Bangkok, and anybody that's trained in Thailand, they know like there's different places you can go, and obviously it's their national sport. It's going to be hard, but if you go to Bangkok, there's no beaches. It's literally like it was a baptism of fire. So I go to this gym. There's not Westerners there. It's really a Thai fighter gym, and we're training twice a day. For about 6 hours a day. And I will hold my hand up. I was not prepared. It was hell, but because of the caliber of the fighters, the master didn't want to take me to a stadium for my first fight. So we've been preparing. I've only really been there about 3 weeks. I think it was towards the end of the first month that I had this fight. We go to Patpong, and it's a bit of a culture shock because I'm from England and they're quite reserved and everything. And then I'm walking down the street and there's signs for like ping pong shows and things, and I'm wondering where we're going. And we pull up at this, like, it was called the Pink Panther. So anyways, it was a strip club, and there was a sign on the outside that said what shows they had on, and then it was like man woman boxing, and
What?
my master said, yeah, so there was like broken English, I guess. They just meant that they had
Okay.
female and male
Okay.
boxers on
Yeah.
as well.
Right.
But the master just says to the promoter, which is the strip club owner, have you got a girl? And he looks me up and down because they don't do weigh-ins, and he's like 1 minute, walks back the back, goes, yeah. And I actually fought the bouncer, the female bouncer of the club, on her lunch break or on her break.
This is
So,
insane.
yeah, she let me in, and then I was upstairs getting oiled up, and I didn't drink coffee at the time, and he's given me one of those Thai Red Bulls, like the syrup,
Okay.
like those. Yeah, so
Yeah.
he's giving me one of those, and then I see this girl. She like waves or like acknowledged me. Went and got changed, put some shorts on. I was like, no, that's not the bouncer, is it? But yeah, so that was my first fight, and it was
What an
pretty
introduction.
fun.
That's
Huh?
amazing. What an introduction to
Yeah.
Muay Thai in
Oh,
Thailand.
it gets worse. So the ring, there was no ring. They cleared the dancers off, like the girls, like the strippers. They cleared the strippers off. They set up a midget ring, and then they gave us these gloves which were like falling apart, like duct tape them on,
Mhm.
and then they set us off with this tiny. And obviously, it was just like you were in a phone booth because it was this tiny ring set up in the dance on the stripper floor, and so you just had to just like box in this, like it was honestly about a quarter of the size of a normal ring. So
And
you
you
just
went
couldn't
along with
box.
this with no stress, no problems. Strip
Well,
club, Red
I had
Bull.
my first coffee, the first Thai Red Bull. I thought I had wings apparently, so I was yeah, I was all right in there. But it
Oh
was
my
pretty full on,
gosh.
and then afterwards, we had to go around and ask all the spectators for like tips for money. It was all just very bewildering, and like she'd done it before, so she went ahead of me, got all the tips, and then I like cap in hand to go around like, but yeah. Oh, and he also took us to McDonald's before. So before that, you know how normally for a fight camp you'd have like a real, like clean run up. He took us to McDonald's, and I was allowed fried chicken. My friends that were there to support me had ice cream, and he was like, "No ice cream," as if
But
like
you
I would.
can, McDonald's is okay, but no ice cream.
McDonald's okay, but not the ice cream, not before fight. No.
But to me, it
Yeah.
sounds like the perfect pre-workout meal. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, just just one Red Bull and some fried chicken. I was ready to go.
Well, that's a great memory, and that will. Was that fight recorded by any chance?
So there is some very, because it wasn't even we didn't have the camera phones then. This is like
No.
I had like a separate camera, and I did have some really bad footage of it, and it's like windmilling. I think I got one round video proof that I windmilled it, and
That's
then the
like
best round
most
we didn't get.
fights. Most debut fights are the windmill ones, aren't they?
Yeah, and then the best round we didn't record, and then there was like it was all just fumbles. So I've got it somewhere in the archives, but it's never been shared for good reason. So, but it'll be good to look back on one day as like that was the starting
Yeah, I
point.
think it's a
So
fantastic story. So you've traveled around and you went to your place of birth, Philippines, and
yeah,
you
so
trained in
yeah,
the traditional national sport there.
yeah, honest. So I was lucky actually that the town I'm from, Cheltenham, which is in the southwest of England, um, we had a gym called Trojan Free Fighters that had a lot of different classes on. So you had MMA, you had arnis, which if people don't know is like the Filipino national sport. So like Thailand has Muay Thai, Philippines have arnis. They teach it in the schools. It's stick fighting, and anything that you do with
Sinawali.
a stick, it's meant to resemble a sword. Yes, it's got lots of different names as well. Yeah, or screamer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been training in England, and then when I went to the Philippines, I wanted to go on my own. I'd only ever gone with family before, and just retrace my steps. So I stayed with my family. So that meant, the bucket showers, doing my laundry by hand. I trained 3 times a day with a master there, and got really good. In fact, they used to tell me off that my skin color had changed because, like Thailand, they can be quite obsessed with the whitening in their products. In the Philippines, they don't like you to be too dark too. And I was always
Oh
training
wow.
outside
In
with
the
my
sun.
master, and he got told off for making me really dark, because when I went there I was like a I don't know what the Filipino word for it, but like a mestiza, I think they say. But yeah, it was definitely worth it, and yeah, it was really good. So there's lots of different levels you can do. Obviously, you start with swords, and then there's lots of different weapons as well. So they have knife and gun, and I did a bit of everything, but I didn't get too far into the gun, which was good, because the shooting ranges there aren't the most up to maybe Australian standard.
It's definitely, for me, one of the most enjoyable traditional martial arts I've trained in, the RNS, and we've introduced it into our freestyle system at Ace Martial Arts, and everyone loves it. And it breaks it up, so we'll go from sparring, boxing, kickboxing, and jump out and grab some sticks and work those routines. It's a wonderful art, and if anyone, highly recommend anyone find a good instructor. So, are you teaching on the Gold Coast? Can someone seek you out?
No, so I did 2 trips to the Philippines, and I think it was 2 months and 3 months. And so in that time, I got really good, and I got to the rank of Dayang, and I did lots of, I traveled, and I trained every day and multiple times with my master there, who was really like a grandmaster. He's one of those like old school martial artists you can imagine. He just almost like in a romantic way, just sitting in the gym waiting for students to turn up, and you might have a boxer and an aikido player, an arnis player, and whatever they ask he's got an answer for, because he's done it all. And so he's still teaching, and that's really beautiful. But for me, I don't teach because I don't want to butcher it, which sounds a bit weird, but it's a whole system in itself. And for me, you've got MMA, you've got BJJ, you've got all these different components to it. For me, apart from me as like just running through, the technique as a light workout, and just for fun, because I'm not practicing it every day, I don't feel confident or like I'm doing it justice to teach. But definitely when I'm not fighting, I would revisit it, because it's so complicated. It's such a complex system. There's so many different things that you could do with it. I have enough on my plate with my actual training for fighting that I can't incorporate that right now. But and I used to feel really guilty about it, especially when I first got back from the Philippines. And I still kept up my training in Sydney for about a year, but I just don't actively train with any armist players at the moment.
Okay.
But it's in there somewhere. In fact, my master had a really beautiful thing. He said to someone when I was there last, which he called me up to demonstrate, and I did something, and he said something I couldn't understand him, and he said that, I just told them that even though you don't practice all the time, you carry it in your heart so you don't forget.
Oh, that's lovely.
It was like, it was real sweet. So I remember that, and that's why, another reason why I want to do it justice, and I wouldn't teach anyone unless I'm actively practicing it.
Yeah, well, you got plenty of time. You're only 32.
Yeah. 32 years young.
32 years young. What other martial arts have you trained in these long years?
Well, actually, in the Philippines, actually, there's one that I do want to spotlight. If no one's heard of it, it's called Yaoyan, and it's a Filipino martial art that was merged with kind of arnis and also kickboxing, but not like a Filipino foot fighting method. It's a Filipino foot fighting system. There's one called Sikaran, but Yaoyan translates to dance of death, and they have 45 different kicks, and they're animal styles. So you've got like the scorpion, the cockle. And so when I went to the Philippines, I asked my masters to take me to this gym, which was in Manila, and I would train. I'd been there twice. I would do privates, and I took footage of some of the kicks that I learned there. Very unorthodox angles, and similar in some ways acrobatically to like taekwondo, but with power. So I really enjoyed it, and one of the best things that I learned from that system is the best offense is the best defense is offense, and everything is very aggressive and very forward fighting, which is my style anyway. So it's something that I definitely would love to have done more of. But having fought in Muay Thai, I feel like and there's a lot of things online actually, Muay Thai versus Yaoyan. I guess it's a bit like what's the name of the Muay Thai with the headbutts?
Muay. It's the is it the
Not Muay Baran. It's
is it what the Burmese boxing?
yeah. There's a
What
guy
is the
looking at
name?
what's it.
There is a
Yeah.
name.
So I'm thinking it's a variant. It's kind of it would be similar to that.
Let me have a
But
look. Muay Thai with
yeah.
headbutts. That's crazy. Muay Thai with headbutts. Muay Cad. That's Bama Lathway. Bama Lathway.
Lathway.
Yes,
Lathway. Yeah, we are probably
we're
butchering it,
saying
but
it butchering. Yeah, it does say Burmese boxing here. Bama Lathway.
yeah, if
Headbutts.
you yeah look up Yao Yan. So that was something in the Philippines that I really love to do. And then back in Sydney, I went all MMA, and it happened by accident too. So I was looking for Muay Thai fights, couldn't find any Muay Thai, and then or I had a lot of fights that fell through, and then Race, this a show that was very prominent a long time ago in Australia. Were doing a lot of shows, and they did their first all women's card, and so I ended up having my debut against someone who was also having their debut, and we were both from kickboxing backgrounds,
Mm.
so or Muay Thai backgrounds. So yeah, and then from then I just had a lot of MMA fights, and worked my way up and got signed to one championship, and then
Oh wow, that would
yeah.
have been a huge achievement. One championship, fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, and then yeah, was in America training MMA, and then yeah, my heart led me back to Muay Thai, and that's where I am now.
Have you ruled out MMA completely, or you may still make a comeback?
No, I will, and that was always the plan actually. So
Great.
I got to a point where I had some really heartbreaking losses in MMA,
Hmm.
and a lot of it was just learning on the job. I think not back in the day because I haven't been fighting that long, but women, because there wasn't so many of us fighting MMA, we seem to get sort of catapulted to pro fights very, very early. And so, suddenly I was like on, fighting pro, and I got signed to one championship very early in my career too. So I really feel like I was learning on the job. And if I was to have my time again, but now that I've improved my Muay Thai, I would definitely be very confident to go back to MMA. And in this time off fighting MMA, I have actually got my purple belt in BJJ, and
Beautiful.
done a few comps and things like that. So I definitely want to go back to MMA, but it's more that Muay Thai is my focus, and I really would like a belt. I mean, I do have belts in Muay Thai already, but I'd like a world championship belt in Muay Thai before I go back to MMA. But you never know what's going to happen,
Hmm.
and so I'm not solid on that. I feel like if I just keep training, opportunities will come up, and then I'll judge when the right time is to go back.
Hmm.
But definitely for now, Muay Thai is my focus.
So what's your training schedule like these days?
So when I moved to the Gold Coast, I made the decision that I was going to try and train as full time as possible. And obviously, that's always been the aim. But I had, everybody has financial commitments. So one of the reasons moving out of Sydney, it's so expensive in Sydney. When I moved to the Gold Coast, I just decided that even if I couldn't, if I had to live really frugally and very simple, that I would and only work part time. So I work part time. I manage a children's gym called My First Gym.
Mhm.
So I help manage the one in Burleigh Heads, and yeah, that's a really cool job because we have martial arts on the timetable. So we've got kids from 7 months old all the way up to 13 years, and
Oh
you get to
wow.
really see their development, physically with their fundamental movement skills, and then going into specialist classes and martial arts. And if you can inspire them then and they really love it, they've just had the best start, physically, and preparing them to go into other stuff. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I do that part time. I do a bit of personal training, like I take some classes, and I have clients, and then the rest of the time I try and do as much as possible. But what it means is training before work. So especially with Wayne, I mean, he retired, but I think if you've been following him, you'd see he's just got signed to one championship.
Yes.
We would run, yeah, we would run at 6:30 every day. So I would run with him before work, and then If I did have a day off, we have a morning class at Boonshu. And then I also have a fighters class every day, 4:30 till 6:30. And then I add in other things. So my strength work I'll do with my coach, who's also my sponsor. So that's WTR Performance.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll also do Nogi at Puma, Essential Unleashed from Mixed Martial Arts, just around the corner from Boonshu, and also the Collective in Tweed, Collective Martial Arts. So I go to a couple other gyms to get my MMA training in, but because I didn't want to overload myself while I'm training for Muay Thai, and I've had like back-to-back fights, I've only really been doing like no-gi. So because I'm time poor,
Yeah.
the only thing I would be focusing on outside of Muay Thai at the moment is a bit of no-gi and maybe wrestling. Yeah.
What a busy.
As well as like all these normal cardio runs, swimming, cycling, that kind of thing. And then
you're a busy girl, so you must be going to bed quite early every night.
So that's been the thing I really need to work on is I used to have insomnia, and I also don't often get more than like 4 hours sleep.
Oh wow.
Even though I train twice a day, and I might have like work and then a client and then training, like it's full on.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't sleep more than like 4 to 6 hours. So I've constantly been trying to improve my sleep, and I've tried lots of things like not like sleep hygiene, they call it, so you don't use your bedroom for anything other than sleep, and that
avoiding
kind of
blue light.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But it's pretty full on, and I really think it's a luxury if you can train full time without having to work. No one I know that is everyone that's successful, most people that are successful are able to train full time, and not many of them have jobs. And all the people that do have jobs and fight, I always find that they are tough as nails, because to have the motivation and just to train as hard as well as keeping up all your other commitments, it's a real hard thing to do. 6-7 days a week.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask you, what are some of the challenges of being a female in a male-dominant sport?
So as a female, I find probably the first thing that comes to mind, and it's definitely better for me in Muay Thai than it was for MMA, is training partners. So, and maybe, I'm not sure, I mean, you've trained martial arts for years, so you probably found the same thing too. But I'm small too with women, like I'm probably the smallest in the gym. So it's really hard to find partners that are the right size. If you go with a guy, they'll either go too light and then it's not realistic, or they go too hard and they can hurt you. And I know it's just as hard for the guys trying to hold back or judge that than it is for the girls. And it's just one of those things that you have to kind of deal with. So I would say training partners probably. And then I guess something that is touched on but maybe people don't speak about, but is just maybe coaches and fans, I guess you could say. So you have people that can not always have your best interests at heart, and not just sort of coaches, but maybe managers or promotional people in the industry that can be a little bit shady sometimes. And then sometimes, most of the fans I've got are really sweet, but occasionally you do get some weird messages from people.
Once you have a profile online, you can't control that.
And it's FYI, I don't look at my other inbox.
Oh no. So what advice would you give to women who are contemplating training in martial arts or getting into fight training?
So for women that want to get into training martial arts or fight training, or maybe they don't know if they want to fight but they just want to do martial arts, I would say definitely do your research, find like a good gym, and then maybe bring a friend if you're nervous. But basically just get involved, because in this day and age, it's not like sort of old school gyms where it's going to be exclusive, or there's a hazing, like you don't get beat up on your first time. And if a coach knows that it's your first time, they should teach you the basics. So for instance, if I have anyone in my class that it's their first time and they've never done martial arts before, the first thing we're going to do is obviously explain what we're doing, work on footwork, work on basics. You're not going to start sparring straight away. So I guess the first thing would be do your research, find a gym or a class that you want to try, and just get in there, because whatever their fears are, it won't be as bad as they think.
Yeah.
You know, if they're nervous about making an idiot out of themselves, you know, or that everyone's going to be watching, everybody starts off as a beginner. You know, for instance, when I first started, two things. I guess the first one, me and my friend we were the only two girls in a boxing class, and I was really nervous about, you know, people judging us or thinking we were weak or whatever. But actually, everyone's, you know, would be giving you props for even going. You know, no one looks down on you. They would be like, you know, they're having a go, and that's like commendable. And then the other thing as well, which not many people know, I don't think I started a blog and I've tried to share a bit more, but there's still a lot of things I haven't like opened up about. But one of the things that I will say, which I'm planning to talk about, is I used to get panic attacks. So with everything that sort of happened before, when I first got into martial arts, I was fine with the boxing. But when I got into grappling and I would have to wrestle guys, sometimes just the actual physical size difference, or if you've ever been wrestling someone and they're not going for a submission, but the weight is on you and it can make you feel like you can't breathe. Yeah, I actually used to run out of the classrooms and cry in the toilets and have to calm myself down, like have a panic attack. But I always went back in. So it was, always went back in. And eventually it stopped happening. But what it was is it was a trigger. Like I would feel someone's weight on top of me. I'd feel helpless, and then I didn't know how to get out. But then when your coach, you know, my coach would show me the defense or how to reverse positions or then use my leverage and sweep, that's when I was like, oh, I know what to do here. And then the panic wouldn't happen. But I was just really stubborn, to be honest, and that's what kept me coming back and improving. But yeah, if anybody's too scared, I fought in front of stadiums of 20,000 people, and I used to cry in a toilet. So that's the biggest sort of takeaway that I can give is that you've got to start somewhere, and that's where I started.
That's right. What do you love most about training in the martial arts?
I feel that martial arts is the biggest vehicle for me for self-development, because it's so humbling. So when you are aware of your body and your capabilities, it's very it makes you feel very human, I guess. And so, you know, you every day you're battling your mind and your body to improve, and then there's so many other things that happen from that. So take boxing, for instance, like you're improving your fitness, you're learning a skill, and then you don't realize that it's going to affect every other area of your life. So that confidence that I started to have in the gym would seep into all other areas of, like, you know, my life. So eventually, you know, I had a better circle of friends. I got out of an abusive relationship. Like, I ended up turning my life around, and then I had a strategy. Like, you know, it gave me direction, and I decided to save up to leave England to pursue this sport. And I've literally been able to travel the world and support myself off my passion, which is something that not a lot of people get to do.
That's right. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's inspiring about your story is you started training martial arts, you stopped, there was a few events, and you got back into it with such energy, traveled the world, trained with the masters, fought in a strip club, you left home, relocated to Australia to follow your passion, and you've traveled the world, and it's an amazing story. And anyone listening, any female especially, you don't have to go that far, but like you said at the start, that one session or those few sessions back into it, you felt better.
Yeah. And it's actually funny when you said, like training with masters. The one thing I didn't mention about when I was training MMA in America is that I actually got to live with another one of the legends of the sport. So when I was first getting into MMA, the first fight that I watched that showed me that women could fight was Cyborg versus Gina Carano,
Mm-hmm.
and that was 2009. And back in those days, I was watching WEC with Cowboy Cerrone, and my dad and me used to watch UFC. We used to watch like WEC and like all the old fights, and I always loved him and followed him. And then when I went to the States, I ended up meeting him at Jackson's MMA, and he invited me to live at his ranch. It was
You're
mid
kidding.
construction, the BMF ranch. So I ended up living with Cowboy Cerrone for the run up to his fight with Darren Till. So for about 5 weeks, I lived at the Bad Motherfucking Ranch and got to learn from the one of my heroes of MMA. So you couldn't make it up. If you were to look at a map and you see Cheltenham Town, like Cheltenham in the southwest of England, and if you told me then that I would end up living with Cowboy Cerrone, like, and training alongside him in his fight camp, and then that I would also be living. I didn't mention that when I moved to Queensland, I was living with the Pars and I was nannying and like looking after their kids. So if you told me in England that one day I would be John Wayne Parr's nanny and that I would get to train alongside Cowboy Cerrone, which to me is like the top, the top, one of the best to ever do it in MMA and the best to ever do it in Muay Thai. Like I would not believe you. So I was just
Well,
really lucky and manifested that all through
you did
fighting.
it. You did
Wow.
it. Wonderful.
So,
So, what's your favorite part of the martial arts training? Is it the pad work, the drills, the sparring, the fitness and conditioning?
mm.
What is it for
So
you?
I really like hitting pads. That for me is cathartic, and like you said about women, like everyone loves to hit things,
Yeah.
and it's definitely a release. But for me, there's a bond you have with your pad man, and so when you have a coach or someone that holds pads for you, I really feel like if you've got a good bond, it's like it's a really cool time. And so one of the things look forward to. I don't not like my job, but when I'm at my work at an office all day, the one thing I'm thinking of as well is that I get to go hit pads and like you get to see your team and go train. But that's what I
Yeah.
look forward to every day is getting to the gym and hitting pads. So definitely that. But also from transitioning from MMA to Muay Thai, I really enjoy the drills because I spent a good chunk, maybe 5 years, training and fighting MMA, where I was training the whole, for everything that can happen in MMA. So going to Muay Thai, I've really had to refocus on learning basics. And
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways, my training's become more rigid because it's all basics. Like when I was fighting people in Muay Thai, they might have had 30 fights. And I have only just got to 18 this year,
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot more amateur fights, a lot more experience, and that means that they have been consistently repping out these techniques and just Muay Thai, just striking, whereas I've been doing all of these other things for years. So as well as hitting pads, I've put a massive emphasis on the importance of drilling and hitting the bag and working on techniques on your own because John Wayne Parr, he's a big stickler for basics and everything he throws is 100% power.
Yeah.
And I definitely take a lesson from that.
I remember doing a session with John Wayne Parr when I was on the Gold Coast, and the one thing that stood out was just you brought it back to doesn't matter how many years experience you've had, let's go through these basic punches,
Mm.
basic moves, basic footwork, and we drilled it for an hour, and I loved it because he loved
Mm.
teaching it. And I
Yeah.
shared a video the other day with some of my clients, a kickboxing fight in Glory, and the guy completely obliterated the opponent with a jab, strong stiff jab, and an outside leg kick. Nothing fancy. He
Mm.
destroyed the guy with those two moves, the basics. Doesn't look sexy, but you
Mm.
cannot do enough of those, and that's so refreshing to hear.
Yeah, that's what, and in fact, when Wayne recently he had Sanctinoy come from Thailand, which was his when he was fighting in Thailand, he was obviously training with him. And when I did his seminar, it was exactly the same. So he took us all through all the basics. We were shadowing, we worked with partners, but it was all just basic stuff. But just they do it with such a precision, and just so perfect. That's what you should be aiming for. And so I really enjoyed that too. Yeah, it's like zoning in on there.
Before we wrap it up, I'd like to ask you some quick questions.
Okay.
Starting with your favorite boxer of all time.
Oh my gosh! So the first name that comes to mind is Manny Pacquiao because I'm English.
Filipino?
Because I'm Filipino. But I was going to say before that, Carl Froch, the Cobra.
The Cobra?
Yeah.
What was his name?
Carl Froch, and I can't pronounce it. It's Froch.
Carl Froch.
Yeah.
Okay,
he's English, but I don't know why I'm stuffing.
Let's stick with Manny Pacquiao, Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Favorite kickboxer or Muay Thai?
Well, I've got to say John Wayne Park.
Yeah, you got to say, yeah.
But also because I'll say Ramon Dekkers as well.
Legend. Have you seen that highlight reel on YouTube? I can keep watching that over and over again. It's amazing.
Vicious, yeah.
He was a pocket rocket. Favorite mixed martial artist?
Cowboy.
Hands
down.
And who are some of your martial arts influences over the years? You want to give them a shout out?
Oh, okay. So,
this will probably take 30 minutes just to go through this list.
I'm going to just try and do it really quick. So, I'll give a shout out to Chambers from Sydney because she was the first professional fighter that I worked with in my amateur days, and she got signed to the UFC. She really helped me when I was first starting out. I'll give a shout out to Michelle Waterson, who was amazing to train with in Jackson's. All of the girls at Jackson's MMA were amazing. We had about 12, 15 of us the same weight on the roster when I was there. It was so much fun to train with them. And also I have a fun team, which is Kerry Hughes, Rocksteady, Lanchana Green, Mean Green, Eden Von Hell, Nicole, and Nadia Chamil, who's from CSA. And so we all met at Jackson's, and that's my team, Wild Pony. We still talk all the time and hang out. And they're doing exactly the same thing as me, traveling and fighting the world. And then obviously all the Boon Shoe fam. There's so many, I'm going to miss people if I go into any more depth.
Yeah, it's okay. If you had to pick punching or kicking?
Kicking. I say kicking, but actually if you watch my fights, I think I'm mainly punches. So that's funny. Kicking came first, but definitely throw more punches actually.
And how can people listening find you online or social media?
So if they want to follow me on Instagram, it's Nat Thrills. If you want to check out my website, I've got links to all my everything, my blog and everything I've got going on. It's natkilipino.com. I'm also on Twitter, which is Nat Kilipino, and on Facebook, it's Natalie, aka the Kilipino. Yeah.
Great, and we'll provide those links on. We'll provide those links on the YouTube page so people can access them. Natalie, It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your time.
So, thanks for reaching out, and it was good to catch up with you. So thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Natalie, from England to the Gold Coast and still traveling the world. It's been a pleasure, and we'll be following you and waving that flag in your next few fights. Thanks again, Natalie. Have a good day and good evening and good year.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Same to you. Talk soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. And cut.